I learned that even when it looks bloody and dark, even when everything around us makes it seem like we're never going to make it out of this rock bottom, if we have faith and pray, miracles can happen. If we have faith and pray, anything can change. Even with a gun pointed at your head, God can make a wall come crashing down in the nick of time. That's my story. The purpose of going to Orlando was simply to have a fun time on a family's friend vacation. I was 20 years old at the time. That was my first time leaving Philadelphia on a plane and going to Orlando. So I'd never been there before. And our entire purpose was just to have fun. We were celebrating it during that time. Akira Murray, she was graduating from high school and she was going to Mercyhurst University on a full basketball scholarship. So it was a lot to celebrate during that time. It's so strange to me whenever I think about how we chose Pulse that night. And partly because I was advocating for going to a different event venue that night because I had heard this music ad playing on the radio like 3 times. I heard it 3 times, you know. It was some other music event that was going on. So when I pitched it to the girls when we got in the house that we were staying at, they were like, no, we're not going to no music event. So we started Googling 18 and up clubs in Orlando. And at the time we were all under 21, so we had to make sure that we could actually get in, and we came across Pulse Nightclub. It seemed like everything was going to be perfect, and truly it really was up until everything happened. We realized something was wrong when something was wrong. We got into the very end of the night. We were getting ready to leave. We had just had the best night of our life. And that's when we heard the gunshots going off in another part of the club. At that moment, although we're all from Philadelphia, I personally never had an experience with gun violence directly. So the sounds that I was hearing, it just scared me. It sounded loud. So I dropped to the floor. And Tiara, she was in front of us at the time, but she ran towards the bar. And then Akira, she was sitting next to me, but then she was pivoting in between Tiara and I. And I was scooting backwards on the floor, just going backwards. And before I knew it, I felt my hands like on the ground outside. But Akira, I saw her coming towards me. So when I looked up at her, I saw the sky behind her hair. And I realized that we were outside. So this was a matter of seconds. We were just sitting down, ordering the Uber. And then all of a sudden we heard this loud noise coming from the other room, and we were outside, and one of our, like my friend was still in there. So that's, and literally I remember these moments point by point, but I remember looking up at her, basically like, where is Tiara? And Akira was like, Tiara's still inside. And I said, we gotta go get her. That's when Akira ran back into the club, and I ran back in after her. And we saw Tiara there by the bar, just paralyzed with fear. And at that point, we could still hear the sounds going off. We could still see people reacting in their own ways. But then we saw people rushing towards the bathrooms. And for the life of me still, even now, when I think about the position of where we were, I wonder why didn't we try to go back towards the open door? But for some reason, we just decided to follow everyone into the bathrooms. And at this point, there's so many things that aren't fully clear to me in this moment right now, but it was so high, it was so much chaos in that moment. You could hear the gunshots. It just made sense at that time to go where everyone else was going, because that's where we thought safety was. We were sitting in the stall with close to 20 other people, and one person in there was already shot. It was a woman, and she was sitting there in the middle of the floor holding her arm, and she was bleeding. And at that point, we just started asking her questions like, what happened to you? What's going on? And although she was verbally telling us that she had been shot, we just did not process or want to believe in that moment that what she was saying to us was true. So we were just like in denial. In those few seconds, we were just in denial, like, no, there's no way. There's no way possible that you could be shot right now. And so we didn't really process it until we heard the footsteps of the gunman come into our bathroom. And after that, it's like as soon as you heard the footsteps, that's when you heard him firing into everything, the walls, the stalls, everything was just, you could literally feel, at the time I thought it was like pellets, but it was actually wall fragments because of how, whatever gun that he was using was literally just exploding everything that it came across with. I realized that I was shot once his gun jammed. If his gun didn't jam, he would have still continued firing at us. But I noticed that there was this hole in my leg that looked like the size of a quarter, and it was just pouring out blood. And me seeing that and looking across to see Tiara and Akira, and they're both in pain. We were trapped in the bathroom with the shooter for 3 hours. 3 hours. And during that time, each and every second felt like it was becoming more and more terrifying, because the longer we stayed in there, the longer he tormented us with his words of just saying things to us, saying little things like, "Did you hear about the Charleston shooting?" And during that time, the Charleston shooting had just happened. He said other things on the phone to whoever he was speaking to regarding snipers being outside, regarding bombs being in his car. So during that 3 hours, we were learning more about the mind of who was in here with us, and that became even more terrifying because it was so sporadic. You just didn't know why this person was here, why they were doing what they were doing, and what all of us had to do in this wrath. And the longer we had to wait in there, the more uncertain the end looked, because after about an hour or 2 hours, at some point we just thought that maybe nobody was going to come for us. I prayed for God to take the soul out of my body because I didn't want to be blown to pieces, and I didn't want to be shot in the face. And we heard another explosion. And then that's when we heard the police shout from outside of the wall where we were, saying, "Back away from the walls, move away from the walls." And then the sound that I thought was an explosion was actually them busting through the wall to come in. So it was a period where we heard the first explosion, we heard the second explosion, but you could hear the shooters scurrying outside of our stall. And then all of a sudden you heard our stall open, and he came in our stall, and he was, at this point, he must have switched to another gun. And all you could hear was, "Hey, you." And he shot somebody. And then he shot another person. And then when it came to the third shot, he was over. I felt his presence over top of me. But there was someone right behind me. And now I know that his name is Jason Josephat. But I felt him get closer to me, and I could hear his breath in my ear. And then the gunman shot again, and I heard Jason scream at the top of his lungs in my ear. And after that happened, the wall came crashing down, and the police exchanged gunfire with the shooter and killed him.
Authorities say Omar Mateen arrived at Pulse Orlando, a gay nightclub and bar, armed with an AR-15 type assault rifle, a handgun, and an unknown number of rounds of ammunition.
It appears he was organized and well prepared.
By the time it was all over, at least 50 people dead, even more injured tonight.
There was never a moment in my mind that considered the possibility that Akira wouldn't be alive to tell the story with us. So when Tiara's mom and Tiara came into my hospital room and told me that she didn't make it, I went into this mode of, it's my fault. I feel guilty for this because she was outside with me. She was the younger one in the situation. She was 18 years old. Throughout the course of years since the shooting happened, I've fallen into many, many, many dark pits of where I felt like I just did not want to go on. I felt like I did not want to live another day because the mystery of why I survived, the mystery of what my purpose is, what am I supposed to use this pain for? How am I supposed to help people? How am I supposed to connect what I've been through with something of significance? And my lack of clarity on that made me feel worthless because I felt like I wasn't figuring it out. And no matter how many people would tell me that I'm so inspired by you, your strength gives me confidence to make it through what I was going through, because I felt like a victim still, because I felt like I was barely making it through each day, it made me feel like I was being inauthentic in how I was showing up in the world, because I just really wanted to help people. And I felt like by me painting this picture of me being this strong survivor who can just sit down and talk about this story for hours, it wasn't necessarily true. Because each time that did happen, I would spiral into having these modes of, like, with PTSD, and thinking about the shooting and thinking about how scared I really do feel each and every day. So it took moments constantly feeling strong and then feeling weak, and feeling strong and then feeling weak, of learning how to get to this mode of resting in this place of being in a champion mindset, of feeling like I'm good and I can be there for others. Because, and honestly, my spirituality, rooting myself in something deeper than me and taking those questions that I could not answer for myself, and honestly surrendering to the fact that I may never understand why Pulse happened the way that it did. I may never understand why I survived something of that magnitude, and just resting in the fact that I have a choice right now to either allow what I'm going through to continue to derail me from the dreams, the goals, the ways that I want to inspire people, or I can choose to navigate through this and learn something from it so I can teach other people to do the same thing. I've been able to cope in a number of different ways. Naturally, I'm a creative person, so anytime I'm under pressure emotionally, physically, I always resort to expressing myself through, whether it's writing poetry, whether it's writing music, whether it's writing an idea for some TV show, whether it's just creating some fictional world that's outside of where I am to have some sort of release. I do that. And lately, journaling and my grateful journal has been crucial into keeping me in the right perspective, because, and I had said this before, but I'm starting to look at life a lot simpler. And especially for people who've experienced trauma time and time and time again, my trauma didn't start at the Pulse nightclub. My trauma started when my mother left me when I was 2 years old. My trauma started when my father became an alcoholic and addicted to drugs. My trauma started when I was being raised by people who didn't necessarily give me all the tools I needed when it came to love. And then I experienced Pulse. So all of these, moments in my life, I've been kind of in training to deal with the worst thing that I ever experienced in my life. So I already had the tools then to write. And and the poem that I wrote, The Guilt of Being Alive, it was kind of me activating that survival mode of something really horrible happening, and then me having to express myself because I got to get it out. And that poem just happened to touch the world. And I continue to do that in my personal writing. I wrote a book, Survived and Lived, and I just talked about the story. I just had to get it out. But now I'm at a place where I feel like people need to know that they can make this shift from being a survivor to being a champion, because our words are very powerful, and how we speak about ourselves, how we speak about where we're headed is very important. And once I came to this consciousness of just realizing that, wait a minute, survivor implies that I'm barely making it. And maybe that is true to where I am today, but me claiming this barely making it is not in alignment with these dreams and these goals that I have. I want to be a champion. And maybe if I start saying that I'm a champion and speaking life over myself and speaking confidence over myself and speaking strength over myself, maybe it'll start to be true. And I started to practice that, and it started to be true. And I started realizing that you have to see the good.
Another mass shooting, this time Texas. At least 19 children murdered, shot dead with a high-powered rifle. 2 teachers also killed.
Today, a grand jury has indicted a man accused of killing 10 black people at a Buffalo supermarket.
Since the elementary school massacre in Uvalde, Texas, 13 days ago, there have been 33 mass shootings across America.
Whenever I see news about a new mass shooting or gun violence on the rise, I start to think about the cycle that's very repetitive of the thoughts and the prayers, and then we go into these conversations about debates, and then everybody forgets, and then something else happens, and it comes back again. And I started to want to judge people, I started to want to judge people, but then possibly God helped me see, well, hey, think about how moments where you're desensitized of looking at these conversations happening and you lose hope. So what do you do in those moments to reinvigorate your hope? You know, by looking at the good. What can we do? What steps can we take? And I think we're kind of all losing that. I think we're all getting sucked into the cycle of just going through the motions instead of really looking at this from a perspective of what can we do and what action steps can we actually take to see change happen. And I think the answer is so loaded that nobody wants to take on that full responsibility of what actually has to be done, because it's not necessarily the gun shooting itself. You know, it's a person that's making a choice. I think people stop caring because they realize that the answers are so complicated that no one's actually got enough empathy within themselves towards themselves to actually care about how to stop gun violence. And maybe it didn't hit home close enough yet for people to care, truly care in an empathetic way. Or maybe it's just that we're all so worn down that we just don't have anything else to give. We don't have any more hope to give because we lost it a long time ago for ourselves. I think we're all at a point where we just don't understand why no action steps have been made towards actually seeing change. We have so many solutions. We have so many things that we've researched, we've talked to survivors about. We've had these groups and we've gotten together, we've put the points down of what needs to change, and there's still no decisions being made. So you have to look at the administration as a whole and say, when are we going to actually do something that helps?
Last night, 5 Republicans joined House Democrats approving a bill that would raise the minimum age for buying semi-automatic rifles and shotguns to 21. And ban large-capacity magazines, as well as kits that allow people to assemble so-called ghost guns.
Whenever someone reaches out to me, whether it's a survivor or someone who was impacted by the story in some way, or they were somehow around during that time, they saw what went down with Pulse that night, I'm always taken aback because the first thing they do is tell me how much my strength each and every day helps them in some kind of way. Just from me functioning normally helps them by seeing me do that, by seeing me push through the fears that they know I probably have. It helps them. So I realized that I don't really have to say too much. I have to show everything. As much as I want to say, this is what you can do to get past your horrible experience, this is the steps that you can take. It's so much more powerful, I see, by me taking the steps first and showing them how, by doing it, you know? And I realized that we have to do that more. Instead of just always saying what will work or what will help people, show me your strength. Show me something that you went through and you were able to push past it and still finish school. You were able to still find love. You were still able to move forward and function and work each and every day, because I realized that a lot of people can't do that. A lot of people can't function and make it through. So I feel like whenever that happens, I'm more so taking it back because I'm just trying, doing my best just to live each and every day. But by me doing that, by me fighting through, and even though on some days it feels like I don't even know how I'm supposed to, I don't even know how I'm supposed to do this, but somehow through God, through leaning on God and spirituality, I'm able to make it. There are days when I feel like I'm filled with so much fear and anxiety. But due to me relying more on God and my faith and just believing that God did not give me a spirit of fear or timidity, but a power, love, and self-discipline, and that is truth for me, and that's what I'll rely on even in the moments when I feel afraid, even in the moments when I'm in the supermarket and I start thinking the what ifs of what could happen. I go back to that word. I go back to those principles that have been getting me through, and that helps. And that helps me find peace.